I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 108 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today I am interviewing Cathy Heller. Cathy is a fire hose of information. You are going to love her. She's the host of the popular podcast, Don't Keep Your Day Job, and the author of a new book by the same name. Every single week, Cathy encourages thousands and thousands of listeners to find more purpose in their life and to get paid to do what they love full time, right? So she started out, her story's fascinating, and you'll hear her tell it in this episode. She started out as a singer-songwriter, and she first found real commercial success licensing her music to TV shows and films and advertisers. And that was a really important pivot after a pretty big setback in her professional life that you'll hear her talk about. And she really rose to success very quickly. She earned a lot of accolades for that work and turned it into a multi-six-figure income, which is pretty impressive. She started a music agency where she licensed other artists' work and started teaching other artists how to grow their own careers. And then she started a podcast, and she started it, and you will love this, 2 weeks after her third daughter was born. Her show has had extraordinary success. She has over 7 million downloads. She's been featured by Apple as a top podcast, and she has gotten to interview some incredible guests. People like the actress from the show The Office, Jenna Fisher, the very popular author and blogger Seth Godin, one of my personal faves, makeup artist Bobby Brown, fitness expert Jillian Michaels, the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, and author Gretchen Rubin, to name just a few. So lots of big names, lots of names you'll recognize. She is also a coach for creative entrepreneurs, and she's helping people all over the world find a deeper sense of purpose and really bring their gifts into the world. So you can just imagine how much I love her because we are such kindreds in what we believe. Now, when she is not teaching or interviewing guests for her podcast, you can find Cathy playing with her 3 little girls or continuing to do songwriting for TV shows and commercials or just enjoying a moment with friends. One of the phrases that Cathy uses a lot is that purpose is the opposite of depression. And she is truly lifting others up to be the very happiest version of themselves. My conversation with her was amazing. The energy between us was great. She is a bright light and so on fire with the work that she is doing right now. It is a privilege to introduce her to you. So without further ado, here is the talented Cathy Heller. Cathy, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It was so nice to connect with you and find out more about all the things that you've done because you've created such a beautiful platform and your audience are people that I really relate to. So thanks for having me.
You are definitely one of our tribe.
Yes.
So first of all, how exciting is it to hear author attached to your name? Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was at this Julia Cameron retreat like 3 months ago. And I was sitting, she has you do all these like breakout groups in little circles and people kept asking, what do you do? And how are you a creative? And I kept forgetting to mention that I was an author. It's like, I couldn't step into it or own it or take my seat at the table. And so when you even just said that, I was like, I guess I'm an author, like I'll always find a way to backpedal. Well, all I really did was like write some stuff. It's like, yeah, no, that's writing a book. I'm like, I guess I did write a book. Yeah.
It's a whole new identity. It's a whole new identity. And I love it when people start to claim that new level of their identity and speak it out loud. It's fun to watch your face as you say that.
Well, I think also, and this might be helpful for your audience, I didn't know I was going to talk about this, but I think sometimes we put things on pedestals in a sense that like, who would I ever be to be a podcaster? Who would I ever be to be a New York Times bestselling author? Who would I ever be to be a mother? I'd have to be perfect. I'd have to have all the answers or whatever. And then you make something and it winds up being successful, let's say, And it wasn't a perfect process. It wasn't a perfect thing. You didn't have all the answers. And maybe that's good. I guess what I'm saying is like, I wrote a book, but as I wrote it, I just like kept saying, just write the next messy chapter, just write a page, just do something. And it came together and it is a book, right? But it's like, same thing with my podcast. Like I just record an episode and then have a conversation with someone else and press record. And I think that maybe is why those words, it's like, I'm an author. It's like, oh, I always put that on this unreachable pedestal until you just do the thing one page at a time, one podcast at a time, one customer at a time, one moment with your kids at a time, which feels so like, what am I doing? Does anyone have a map? And yet you're doing it, right? So maybe that's where there's a little bit of a disconnect there also.
Yes. Well, we are going to get all into the book and the story behind the book and what your message is in just a minute. But I want to make sure we ground this audience in who you are. You have a fascinating backstory and it led you to this work. So take us back to your early career as a songwriter and what prompted you to get from there to here.
Yeah. I mean, when you said it, you have a fascinating story. It's like, yeah, I think that part of my story is the fact that I think everyone has a fascinating story. Like I have 3 little girls, 3, 6, and 7 years old, and they love these LOL dolls. And they're like all the rage right now for any mom who has little girls, you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
And yeah. And what makes them work is that it's like, you don't know what's inside, right? Like that's what actually, like if they would show what the doll is, they probably would sell far less. It's like this, ooh, what is it? And I think everyone has that story. And I think that's what always, in a way, that's where my journey starts, is that I, from a very young age, had parents who were really unhappy. And I had a tremendous amount of this knowing that people really wanted to feel seen. People felt invisible. And so when I look at like my music career, my podcast career, or how I even got from there to here, it all kind of boils down to empathy. I'm not joking. And like showing up in rooms where I like don't have an agenda and I'm just making somebody feel seen and heard because I truly value it. And it makes me actually feel good to do that because I know what it's like to not have that. And my mom and my dad were really depressed and anxious when I was growing up. They had a really hard marriage. My parents wound up getting divorced. My mom was really suicidal. She still really struggles with depression heavily. And so I didn't feel seen. And I wanted to grow up and I wanted to write music. And I wanted to do that because I thought if I could be a rock star, then people would finally hear me and see me. And I came out to LA and I got a record deal and I got dropped from Interscope 3 months later. And I say it super quickly because I'm trying to tell a bigger story, but it took a lot to get a record deal. Like they don't just give those out, you know? Right. They're not just like handing those out in the mall food court.
Right.
And it took a few years of writing bad songs and then better songs and finally writing really good songs and getting the right meeting and sitting down and wearing the right clothes and having the right moments. And I got a record deal and I got dropped from the label. And when I got dropped, I thought I was like Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz. I was like, well, I've met the Wizard of Oz. He can't get me home. Nobody has, like, what am I going to do? And so I got a day job and everybody gets a day job and tells you like, oh yeah, that's what being an adult is. Duh. Like you're supposed to be unhappy and like pay your dues and like you can be happy when you retire and that's just the way life is. And I was like, this sucks. And probably because I came from a background where my mom and dad were so unhappy, I felt like I couldn't tolerate being unhappy. I felt like my life can't be about that because I won't make it. Like I've been through such darkness that like it has to feel good to wake up every day or else I can't just like read People magazine, go to work, watch Netflix. I couldn't do it.
Yes.
So I wound up having a few day jobs. And after a few years of doing a few different things, I worked in a nonprofit. I worked in an interior design firm. I worked at a casting office. I worked in real estate. I tried so many things and I was just like, no. And I wound up going back in to the question. I asked myself, is there any other way to do music? Is there any other way besides Beyonce? And I wound up writing music for film, TV, and advertising. And I wound up figuring out that entire beast, that there were people at NBC and Paramount and Lionsgate and Sony Pictures who were choosing songs every day for TV shows and movies. And I found out who they were. And I found out what they needed. And I found out I could use my creativity to tell a bigger story and solve someone else's problem and get excited and get paid. And
I just love that. Like, just pause for a second on that, because that alone, I did a podcast episode a number of episodes ago talking about how do you take like your core passion, your core talent, your core gift, and if it's not going to monetize or it's not going to pan out in exactly the way you envisioned, so many people go into all or nothing. right? All or nothing. I'm just going to abandon ship that I must not be.
100%.
And I love that you were like, there's another way. There's another way.
Yeah.
So,
and that was an epiphany, because I think you're absolutely right. And that's part of why I wrote the book, because that is such a common, consistent paradigm that there is no possibility other than all or nothing. You're either Lady Gaga, Bill Gates, Martha Stewart, Oprah, or you are nothing. You are going to get health insurance if you're lucky and work at a desk, and that is it. And that's part of why I wrote the book. What wound up happening is I found that middle place, and I was making $300,000 to $400,000 a year writing music for film and TV and advertising. And we're right now on video, so you can see like behind me are these like beautiful framed articles where there were full page stories then written about me in Billboard, Variety, the LA Times, LA Weekly, USA Today, all this stuff. I was like, what? This is newsworthy? And it was newsworthy because my story was there's something in between. And I forged my own path, and I started to teach other songwriters. And then I started to be asked to speak at colleges and to creatives of all kinds. And I'm like, what's happening?
Right.
And instead of resisting that, I actually leaned into it. And so I just yes-anded. I was like doing my music, and then I would add another hyphen. Like, yes, I can also be a creativity coach. I can also help you monetize your dream, and I can talk about it. And then I started an online course, and it made $1 million in a year. And then I decided to just launch it twice a year. And so the next year it made 2 million. And I was like, oh my God, I actually have something to say. I have a point of view, and I have a very clearly defined approach to how to make a business work. And then I started a podcast to talk to human beings about how to find more purpose, how to find more meaning in your life. And it's called Don't Keep Your Day Job. And it says don't keep your day job. But in the book, I make a really clear point of saying, it's not about a day job or not a day job. The day job is a euphemism for something in your life, whatever you're doing in your life that doesn't light you up. And the reason I use that phrase is because for a lot of people, when they talk about their dreams, people will say, well, don't quit your day job. Like, don't dream.
Right.
Don't dream too far, Yes. And so the don't keep your day job could be anything in your life that is analogous to you feeling like you're not doing you. And so the work I do on the podcast and the book that I wrote is really intended to help people come home to themselves and to feel like they're just finding joy, and they're offering the world what it is that they have to offer, because we're all built to be happier and to find a way to serve.
Yes.
And the service brings us the happiness. So that's really now my mission, is to help as many people do that as possible. So that's the whole story.
I love you, because we're such kindreds on that belief.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, something that I teach about a lot is that I call it our contribution, right? It's using our gifts in service to someone else. That's my definition of the purpose-driven work.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's not aligned with how you make a living. Sometimes I think our contribution is work that we may do outside of it. And the example I always use is coaching. Like, my husband is one of them. People where just being a coach lights them up, right? Coaching sports, but it's not his job. It is an important part of the contribution.
Yeah.
Do you think it has to be monetized? It has to sit inside your...
No. I think it depends. We all know, here's the thing. We all know when we're playing small. Okay. Sometimes you're not monetizing it because you're sitting it out and you don't want to accept that. Maybe you tell yourself, well, I don't really want to charge for this. I feel sleazy, or you have a hard time receiving money for this beautiful thing that you put in the world. Other times you really don't want to get paid for it. You actually really just purely want to volunteer and help kids learn to read, or you really want to coach that team. And that's what actually makes it enjoyable. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of have a gut check so that you can listen in. Mm-hmm. I think why I try to put it out there that possibly we could do it and make a living is because imagine if when you zoom out, most people spend most of their time at work.
Yep.
So imagine if the time you spent working, you could spend all of that time doing the thing that you love that's also serving. You would then actually just be more able to serve, right? Instead of saving it up for Thursday evening or for Sunday morning, you would get to do it all the time, which if you had, like anything, like let's say you have like 5 hours to work on this podcast and you do it just for the love of it. If I said, I'm going to give you 20 hours to work on it, could you offer more value to people?
Right.
You know? So what if we could just, like you said before, remember you said, I love how you found a new way. It wasn't all or nothing. It wasn't black or white. I think that what we need to do when we're helping a person is allow them to see life in a new way and give them a new possibility. And so, no, it doesn't have to be that way. But I wonder if we've been conditioned to believe that the things that we love, the things that come easiest, the things that we have the most fun doing, I wonder if the paradigm is, well, you're not going to do something like that full time.
Right. I think there's a healthy dose of truth in that. And I sometimes wonder, is the natural order of the world actually, if we all found our way to the work that was truly fulfilling,
Yes.
would the world actually work better? Right.
That's my exact, yes. If you want to run for president and you say that, I will vote for you because that is what I think.
Yeah.
And you said it so well.
I agree. And yet the compensation piece is what gets in the way. And that's why you're so passionate about, but what if we could make a living, right? What if we actually could?
Yeah. And what if we could figure out what's in, and what if we could dissect that monetary piece so that we could actually have a different relationship with sales and how sales is actually really tied to service and empathy? Because that would flip it all on its head, right?
100%. Yes. Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. So I'm interested in some other examples. Your example, and you have a lot of these because you've interviewed a bazillion people on your podcast, but your example was, okay, I was a songwriter. I had a record deal. And when that disappeared, I figured out how to sell my music to TV shows and commercials that needed music. Okay. Give me some other examples of people who found another way.
So good. Love the question. I mean, on the show, what's been so cool is I've gotten to interview people like Howard Schultz, who created Starbucks as we know it, who, by the way, grew up in public housing, lived in a tenement growing up, had not 2 nickels to rub together. So that really is the most amazing story on so many levels. Like I've never personally met anyone who has a bigger delta from $0 to $3.5 billion.
Amazing.
That's cuckoo bananas town. Okay. I've also gotten to interview Jenna Fisher from The Office and Bobby Brown, who was a waitress and then became a makeup artist and then started selling all of her stuff till she one day sold it for billions and gajillions of dollars to Estee Lauder. So that's been one level of examples. And we could talk about those stories, but the stories that I actually find even more interesting than those, because those are like, whoa, people listen and they go, oh my God, that sounds like 15,000 light years ahead of where I'm at. So
sometimes it's hard for people to connect to those. Right. They're inspiring, but it's hard to see yourself always in those stories.
Yeah. But I will say one of the prerequisites of being on my show or being mentioned in the book is that you did start at ground zero. Like you did not have the trust fund. And so that's what I love about Bobby Brown's story. That's what I love about Jenna Fisher. She came out from St. Louis. She's like, I want to be an actor. That's the best. Okay. So that in and of itself makes it feel like it is doable. Like these people didn't have all those extra things that I don't have.
Right.
But anyway, one of the things that we could talk more about is the people who sort of made a new way and a new life. And I actually love that. And I love talking about those stories because that maybe is to me the new American dream anyway. It's like, why does it have to be famous? Why do you have to be a celebrity? Why does it have to be the biggest, right? Can't you just have a beautiful bakery on Main Street, yoga retreat that brings you a ton of fulfillment that could also make multi-six figures? Your life can be so forever changed by just finding something you love doing every day and serving 30 people a week. So let's talk about that because that is totally doable.
Absolutely.
One other path would be, we've had a few really cool stories. One woman, she lives in Calgary, outside of Calgary. And she was a listener of our show. And she told me, you know what, Cathy, I had gone through a really hard adoption process where I didn't get to adopt this little girl in the end. And I was devastated because she had fostered this child. That's so heartbreaking. She said, I was in such a bad place and I really just couldn't stop crying. And my husband said, just do something. And so I started listening to your podcast and it started to pick me up. And you said, just do the next messy thing. Just give yourself permission to dream and just take one step. So she said, when I was 7 years old, I had this dream of opening a mobile bookshop. Because in my town, the library had a bookshop on wheels that would come around once in a while. We could go inside and it'd be at the end of the block. And I thought it was so cute, but we'd have to give the book back. But I just loved it. I thought, what if I could make a mobile bookstore And so she said, I asked the question, like, what would I need and what kind of van would I buy and how would I outfit it and take the seats out and build the little shelves? And she did. And it's called Daisy Chain Bookmobile. And she said, the first time I like stepped in it, when it was all said and done and painted on the outside, I just cried. Like, it was actually the thing I'd always dreamed of that I kept saying it was so stupid. It was so silly. Would you believe she then asked herself, well, where will be the first place that I unveil this? Where will be the first place I take it? And she thought about where would people be? She knew that there was going to be what's called their winter festival in town, where like this big marketplace and all these people come out. It's like a fair. And she called to see if she could get a permit to park it there. And they said that would be a great idea. And she had a little clicker where she would count as every person walked into the van, and people were smiling. Oh my God, Anne of Green Gables. Oh my God, taking selfies, which she calls shelfies.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's cute. And she said she stopped clicking after she hit 400 people because her finger was like hurting. And she was like, okay, I get it. There's a lot of people here.
Hey friend, ever wondered why you're so tired all the time? Why you need that afternoon caffeine hit every day just to stay in the game? Hint, you probably need more sleep. So I created something just for you. It's my 7-day sleep makeover. I'll teach you the 3 steps you need to move from exhausted to energized so you can live out your brilliant dreams. Head to brilliantbalance.net/sleep and start your sleep makeover today. You're going to love this.
Well, now that's what she does full time. She drives that van around. She gets paid sometimes to just come to parties. She gets paid sometimes to just show up at a school or at a nonprofit. And she said her favorite thing is hugging each customer and asking them the stories they love and hearing their stories. So that's one great story.
I love it.
People now on the other side of the country have called and said, can I franchise this? Can I have my own Daisy Chain Bookmobile? So
I love it.
I could literally tell you so many stories like that. I want to tell you one more, and I know that it's not a woman, and a lot of this audience is probably female, but it's just a really cool story, and I think women would relate. There was a man, he's still here, he lives in Missouri, and his name is Greg Franklin. He was a listener of our show, and he said, I want to do something else. And he worked at a factory. He was told his whole life, like, grow up, get health insurance, and just be a good part of society. Don't be happy. Don't worry about being happy. But he was really unhappy, and he had 3 kids, and he was just feeling depressed. And he worked at a dog food factory. He worked at a factory where his job was making plastic bags for dog food. And he heard me say, see if you can just think of something to do that feels good. It doesn't have to be the end all be all. Just do one thing today that your 6-year-old self would be happy to do.
Yes.
So he made a cheesecake. And it didn't come out so good. But then the next day, Facebook knew that he wanted to make cheesecakes all of a sudden. So Facebook showed him like 2 more recipes. So he made 2 cheesecakes the next day. And one of them was like Oreo cookie. And he had 2 cheesecakes, and he wasn't going to eat 2 cheesecakes. So he took one of them down to the fire station and he left it there. And they said, thanks so much. It's so sweet. And the next day, the fire chief called from his little town in Missouri and said, it was so delicious. Did you drop that off? We have one of our firemen is having a birthday next week. Could you come back and bring us like 12 of them? Because we'd love to serve them at this party. And he just said, okay. He's like, I don't know how I'll do it, but I'll figure it out. And long story short, he did a little bit of that every single day where he'd go into town with like a freezer bag and try to sell 5 cheesecakes or 10 cheesecakes to different businesses. He'd open the door, go into a bank, go into his beauty salon, see if anyone would buy a cheesecake. He did it until finally one day he actually got fired. And he posted in our Don't Keep Your Day Job listener community that he got fired. And somebody posted and said, Greg, look at Google right now. It's National Cheesecake Day.
Wow.
And that was amazing serendipity, right? Like little synchronicity, little winks from the universe. God sometimes winks at you. So he said that to his wife. Oh my gosh, can you believe I got fired? And it's National Cheesecake Day. So he decided to open up a brick and mortar shop. And he said he would keep it open for 3 months if he could just make the rent and see what would happen. On the first day they opened, they made 3 times the rent in one day.
Amazing.
One of our other listeners called him and said, I listened to the show and I heard about you on the show, and I own a chain of grocery stores and I'd love to be buying your cheesecakes in bulk.
Okay. You just gave me the chills. That's so amazing.
Amazing. And it's gone on and on and on. And I honestly, without exaggeration, could sit here for the next 2 hours and keep telling you those stories, which is what makes me so happy to do the show. Because I could literally keep telling you about all the thousands of listeners who've gone ahead. And yes, it's not Beyonce or nothing.
Right.
And you can literally change your life
I mean, I just think I want everybody to take a second and just breathe on that story, because if you sit for one moment and allow yourself to think, well, it must be nice, right? Must be nice that worked out for that one person. I mean,
right?
Cathy is sitting here saying she can tell hundreds of these stories. There are hundreds of these stories, thousands of these stories, right? And the question that I want everyone thinking about is, where are you in that story, right? Where are you in finding your path to it? Are you made the first cheesecake to drop off at the fire hall? Are you have people asking you if they'll make cheesecakes? Are you in the brick and mortar? Like, everyone's somewhere in that story within their pathway to the dream.
That's right.
So I love that. And it reminds me of, I've read this quote this is your quote. I'm going to read it back to you. But you said, everyone has a great idea. The thing we're missing is momentum. And the reason we have no momentum is because we don't put it out in the world. We have to give ourselves permission to put it out in the world and be messy about it. So I call that imperfect action. That's the phrase my listeners will hear.
I like that.
You're saying just take that first step and tell me how that leads to momentum.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's being messy, which is really important. And then if I zoom out and I look at all the different steps of building a business, building anything, a relationship, I mean, business is basically a relationship, right? Because you're really serving someone's needs, and then you're just basically getting paid to have a relationship with people whose needs you can serve. But if I look at like zooming out, what do you get the most reward for? What actually builds it? What actually creates the momentum? It's not going off in a cave and tinkering around in a laboratory with the product and making 15 colors of the lip gloss. It's not writing 200 pages of the book by yourself. It's putting it out in the world. It's the outreach. It's the talking. It's the calling up a few local shops and saying, I make granola. You have a coffee shop. You might have an audience that wants to buy some granola along with their coffee. Can I come and give you a sample? You will get disproportionately rewarded for that more than you will by sitting and trying to make 14 new perks and tinker with the app, because people build businesses backwards. They're by themselves creating something. They're not validating the idea. They're not knowing who it is for, right? So the more you're just talking to the audience, talking to the people, the momentum is just like crazy. What happens is one person will say like, oh, I don't need granola, like free, loose granola, but I really need I would love like granola bars or something that's gluten-free. That would be so cool. And then you go, oh, I'm so glad I didn't make 15 more flavors of granola, because now I know you want granola bars and
not a wasted ingredients. Yes.
Right. So
it's that minimum viable product, early market validation, right? And if people follow the startup community, you would know that. But that's not, most of my audience is not tapped into the startup world, but that's the notion, right?
And even within that, I think that people are not necessarily always so good and savvy at doing outreach, because when we go to do the outreach, let's say let's say you've listened to all the startup stuff, you've read the books. When you go to do it, most people become very stiff, very businessy. They start to prove themselves and try to be impressive. It's not impressive. The best thing to do is to drop the script, drop the pitch, and listen and ask questions and be casual and do the same thing you did first day of summer camp. Make a friend. Just make a friend. If anything, talk about anything but your business. And from that's what I'm saying. So much momentum. When we go in with an agenda, when we go in with our hands in someone's pockets, like, this is what I want from you, the momentum is lost, because in that moment, if you just showed up to meet that person, they might actually have a bigger idea or a different idea. Or you might think that they own this little coffee shop, but you might not realize that their father is part of this conglomerate where they own like an airline, and they'd actually much rather you make it in these packets, and then all the flights will serve. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You just don't know.
Well,
there's an episode in Seinfeld where Kramer gets burnt, and he had caught hot. Well, I never said this before in an interview, but all these things, I think Kramer hot water on him, and the lawyer says, okay, we're going to go in. It's a company that's supposed to be like a Starbucks, but whatever. He's like, they have so much money. You're going to get such a settlement. Just let them talk. Don't speak first. Just let them finish. And so the guy says to him, okay, well, first, we would like to offer you a lifetime of coffee for free. And he goes, great, done. I'll take it. He goes, no, don't. Right after that, the guy goes, oh, I was going to say $4 million, but you're good with it. He's like, no, not good with it. Right?
Too late.
If you could just listen if you could just step back, there might be blessing. There might be interesting ways that you can serve, that you can connect, that you can talk to someone, even if they turn out and say, oh, I don't want any granola.
Right.
Okay, wait. What do they want?
Yes.
Well, we already have granola. But you know what would be really interesting, I guess, since you asked, because you're asking me, what do I need? I really just need someone who makes bagels. And then maybe you say, I don't, but I know someone who I want to put you in touch with. And that person says, that was so generous of you. And then you become just a nice human being. And then maybe the next time this person knows someone who needs granola, they think of you. And it's just a nice way to be in the world.
Right. What I keep thinking when you're talking, Cathy, is you're such a good, it's responsive. When you think about this outreach, it's not like, I have this pitch, I have this thing I have to sell you, or I have this, product I want to make or job I want to get. It's like, I want to understand, how can I be of service? What do you need? This is one thing you might need, but let me listen and respond and really be curious about whoever the person is, right? Involved in the rest of the conversation. And that creates bravery, which is that first step of momentum, right?
Well, thank you for saying that you feel like I'm responsive.
I think that's what you've just been illustrating is your willingness to say, I'm going to be responsive to whatever the market is, whoever the conversation is, whoever the human is, right? What they need. So that is the whole idea behind the book. The whole idea is, you hear the passion in your voice on getting people to get out of their own way and actually take the steps that they need to take to bring their passion to life, right? To actually make that their living. And so the book, for everyone listening, was released on November 12th. So it's available now. We'll have it linked in the show notes. It's called Don't Keep Your Day Job. This is great branding. So who did you hold in mind while you were writing this book? Who is it for?
Oh my gosh. I had this woman on my show, Tara Moore, who wrote a book called Playing Big.
Tara. I know Tara. Yeah.
And when she was on my podcast, I said, who did you write your book for? And she said, my mother. And she goes, and I think if everybody was really honest, anyone who wrote a book wrote it for their mother. And I was like, oh my God, that's so deep. My mom, I told you before, struggled with depression my whole life. And probably she was my first audience, the person I wanted to help the most and to encourage and help inspire the most. And then I also wrote it for the person who I was five minutes ago, right? I think that when people say, who's my audience? It's you, right? It's the person that you were, because there are people exactly like you who get it, who walk through life with those feelings. And so I know what it's like to feel invisible. I know what it's like to not know for sure if I'm going to get to do the thing that really feels magical to me, that I feel most inspired by. And so I wanted to help people know that this was possible and start to think about, what could I do to move into a place that really feels like me? And in general, this book is really not only about work. It's a little bit also about acknowledging whatever you've been shoving aside. I used to think that there were creative people and not creative people, but now as a grown-up, I don't think so. I think about my daughter who's 3, and I go into her preschool classroom, and every single kid is so excited about being creative. And so this book is also about that, because when you said before, imperfect action, part of the book is just about the permission slip you give yourself to be messy. And that will free up so much of your life outside of your work. It's
so much.
I think when we look at ourselves as kids and you see the fact that you were creative and you ask yourself, well, why am I not now? It's because those kids in the preschool classroom, they have paint up their nose, they have paint in their hair, and they just let it be. And then what happens is that everyone who's listening to this right now, I know for a fact, and it's sad, but every one of us, myself included, at some point in your childhood, whether you were 8 or 12, you were really hurt. You went through a tremendous amount of pain or trauma or loss. And one thing that we do as human beings is we try to protect ourselves from pain. And so we don't want to be messy because we don't want to make a mistake. We don't want to put our hands out and not be loved back. We don't want to try the relationship. We don't want to want a new business. We don't want to write a chapter of something, even if you just wanted to play guitar for fun, but you feel like you're so bad at it, you won't even give yourself the grace to practice because you won't be able to stand the fact that it's not perfect. And that keeps you feeling inadequate, and it keeps you feeling stuck, and it keeps you feeling repressed. And I think if we could give ourselves just the permission to make things and to play with things, then it's so freeing. It doesn't matter if it becomes a business. It just matters that you wind up feeling more like yourself and more alive. And maybe there is stuff that comes from that. Who knows? Maybe it sets you on a new course in your marriage or in your motherhood or in your business. But yes. I think all of that is tied into the book.
And the book is the guide to getting started, really. It's very practical, not just theoretical, not just inspirational, but very practical in terms of steps people can take and actions.
There's two pieces of the book. Part of it is sort of like, let's get clear about what we're discussing and what are the mindsets and what are the shifts and what are the new possibilities. And it's like a Marie Kondo, like first we got to clean out the closet, right? And get it messy until we can start putting it back and knowing where it goes. Like, let's take out what you're really feeling and look at it. But the second half of the book talks about, okay, well, how do you do this? You need to, above all else, serve, which means you need to serve someone, which means you need to know who your audience is and you need to build trust with that audience. And I talk a lot about empathy and vulnerability because they really go together, because you have to have empathy for other people, but you can't do that unless you have empathy for yourself. And that means it goes back to being messy. It means I have to let go of the shame and be willing to talk about the fact that I don't have it all together. Like, you can, if you want to grow a podcast super fast, you don't have to have all the answers. Be the person who says, I'm right there with you. I don't have it all figured out. I have anxiety. My husband and I struggle. I don't know what it's like all the time to be the perfect parent. People are scrolling every day when they're looking for content, when they're looking for a business to support, when they're looking for anything, what they're truly seeking. They don't want to feel alone. They want to feel that the words that are in your post, that the words that are on your podcast, that the words that you're saying in your branding reflect the things that they feel and they think. So there's so much there. And the steps are really, I do outline those kinds of steps. And then there are certain kinds of tools, right? Like, in order to then get your audience to that next step, you want to create an email list, right? You want to then nurture them and show up for them consistently before you ever sell them something. You want to deposit. Those are like basic things. But what matters more than all those tools is knowing, sort of in the more holistic way, like, how are you energetically when you show up on those platforms? Because you're not successful because you have a podcast, because you have an email list. You're successful because of how you are and the energy that comes out of you. You could do this on any other platform, right?
I appreciate you saying that, but the energy piece of this is so key. And I've heard you talk about this on your podcast. I think that energy that you bring to the work, it's very natural and it's automatically amplified when it's what you're meant to do, right? When you're living on purpose, it's just there for you. And if I try to take my same being and go, my classic example is work in a zipper factory, like, I'm not going to have the same energy because I just don't care enough about manufacturing great zippers, right? So that, I think you get a natural lift, right? An energetic lift. Your vibe is higher when you're really doing what you're meant to do. No question.
That's so interesting that you said that. I had James Clear on my podcast. He wrote a book called Atomic Habits. And he talks in the book about when you're thinking about how to grow a business or how to build a relationship, a friendship, anything, you need to really understand psychology. And what people really need, he said, there's a few primal things. Like, we need to protect ourselves from danger. And one thing that we desire is energy, right? Energy is what keeps us alive. Any living thing needs energy, right? Plants, people, animals, we need energy. So when somebody has energy and is enthusiastic, that is literally like the magnet, right? That's going to help grow that relationship, that business, because the energy is what the other person goes, I don't know what that was, but I can't get that from anywhere else, right? And that's where it's priceless.
So true. It's like moths to a flame, and you see it in any area of life. Like, you just want to be around that person
and everybody has that about something. That's the point. It's like, I might have this and you're so good at this. It's like, right, well, this is my thing. And then there are things that, so part of what I'm doing in this book is trying to help you excavate what is the thing that gets you energized. And actually, we made a quiz on my website, cathyheller.com, on the homepage. We just released it. It's so fun. It's like what's your passion finder? What's the thing that you can get passionate about? Because it's 4 different archetypes of work you could do, like maker, teacher, curator, the person who might not be making the pottery, but wants to be around the artist and help the artist who, and then there's the investigator person who just wants to talk about things and get paid to do blogging or podcasting. So I've created a quiz with my team to help people figure out what is their passion? What do they get excited about? And that's step one, right?
Fun. Well, we will definitely link that in the notes as well, because everybody loves a good quiz, right? Everybody loves to find their type. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you ready for a speed round?
Yes. I think that's so fun.
These are fun. There's 5. Okay.
Okay.
So first question is, what makes you feel brilliant?
Talking to you right now, I feel pretty smart. What makes me feel, is that a good answer? Or do you want
that's else? A good answer.
Okay.
What's your favorite time-saving or productivity hack?
Energy. When I am in a peak state of energy, I will get more done on no sleep and with no time. When I feel low and depressed and down, it doesn't matter if you give me a whole day, I won't get anything done. So it's all about then like getting my energy up by feeding my thoughts and getting me into that bold, like ready to rip it open state.
I love it. It's like a force multiplier. That's great. Okay. 3, what have you learned to say no to?
Oh, I've learned to say no. This is it's a backwards thing. I've learned to say no to the part of me that doesn't want support and say yes to support, because my relationship with support is fascinating. And now it's like, I'm actually going to say yes. Therefore, I'm going to say no to things that I don't want to take on and hire someone else to do it and put up some boundaries so that I can say yes to the things that only I should be doing. So having support, saying yes to support and saying no to things that other people can do for me.
Beautiful. Okay, this one for you is going to be easy. What's the song that you turn on when you need to get in the zone?
Oh my gosh, there's so many good ones.
Better be one of yours.
Oh, that's so sweet. I have a few like that. My song Heart of a Hero is like a real like uplift. But there's a song by an artist named Ben Rector. He is from Oklahoma originally. And you guys all have to go listen to the song. It's called Fear. And it's a song about how there's a part of you that so badly wants to sit it out because you're at the edge of your upper limit and you don't think that you will be able to hack it. And you say, what are you doing? Go back home. You're just a little boy from Oklahoma. And you decide, it makes me cry. Like, you're not going to run. You're just going to keep going. And that part of you is the part that you know is there, which is why you love every movie where you're fighting for the hero to get back up. And so I love that song. It puts me right back in that frame of mind where it's like, I'll think, Cathy, who are you to interview Howard Schultz today? And it's like, I'm going anyway. Listen to the song. It's called Fear, Ben Rector. So good.
Oh, we will. Cathy, thank you for sharing so generously.
Oh my God, thank you. I love you. You're so fun to talk to. We should totally be friends. I mean, I'm all in.
I'm going to have a podcast. We're going to have a real life podcast circle of friends that we can all like hang out. It's You have been fantastic. We will drop all the links in the show notes so our listeners can find them. And you are just brilliant. Thank you.
You are brilliant. So it means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. How fun was that? And how great is Cathy? That was a blast. It is always so delightful to find a kindred spirit, someone who truly shares a belief system and yet comes at this whole body of work around helping people pursue their purpose from a completely different angle with a completely different skill set than I have. I just love getting to meet people like Cathy. So let's see, where are we headed next week on the podcast? Next week is Thanksgiving. And so the podcast will come out 2 days before Thanksgiving. Many of you will be traveling to visit family who may not live in the same city you do, and maybe you can listen to the podcast in the car next week. I am going to be sharing some ideas for managing tricky family dynamics that can pop up at Thanksgiving and other holidays. It's a time when we're spending some extended time with extended family. And those dynamics, for some of us, are delightful, right? It's a joy. And for others, it can be a little tricky. And so I'm going to get into some ideas to help you navigate that holiday with grace and with joy so you can really get through it in the spirit in which it is intended. Now, a couple of things that you may want to do. If you loved today's episode and you want to stay connected, the best thing to do is to come join me in the Brilliant Balance group on Facebook. Just head over to Facebook, find the group Brilliant Balance, and we will welcome you into the community. It is a great place to get bonus content after the show, lots of video clips that we post in there, great discussion threads with members of the community, and a really strong community of women that you may want to be a part of. So that's within Facebook at Brilliant Balance. You may also want to come find me on Instagram. I'm doing lots of fun stuff in stories, and I am at C Skolnicki on Instagram, or you can follow at brilliant_balance. Would love to see you there. That's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is the podcastfactory.com.